Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week, we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back for another week of For the Record. Today we have a little bit of a different episode. We usually have injectors on who are actually in a clinic practicing, but today we're going to talk about building the practice and thinking about our wealth management, our alternative plans, and how to build around our MedSpa with more than just that business to grow our overall life plan. And we have an expert here today, Tracey, who is the founding principal of Tracy, Donavan, which is a boutique insurance firm, also wealth management firm, financial services. And she has taken over the MedSpa industry. So she's really focused on our industry, how to help MedSpa owners, women specifically. She has a fantastic podcast called Diamond Hands. She's writing a book about the MedSpa industry and how to really impact it as a business owner. So she's a busy lady who's speaking all over the country, sharing her messages, and she's here with us today. So Leslie, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tiffany. It's so great to be here with you.
We're excited to have you because I met you, I don't know, even a month ago, maybe less, and we just clicked instantly. We share a passion for fixing businesses and helping people to get things on track. And I think what you have to talk about, what you have to offer is a missing piece. We get so involved in our businesses day to day that we forget about planning and about the risk and the problems that could occur. So we want to hear all about you. So kick us off with what you do all day and a little bit about your life.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as you had introduced me, I do own Tracy Donavan Insurance and Retirement Services. So we're a boutique risk management firm. And so basically when I talk about risk, when you look at your financial house, you have different things. So you have the base part of your plan because we're, like Dr. Tiffany said, we're so focused on the accumulation. We're like, oh my goodness, we need to get more faces in the door. We need to do more treatments. But we're not thinking about, okay, what happens to our hands, what happens to those things, and what are our contingency plans when those things happen. So like my podcast is Diamond Hands podcast, as you had said. And it's funny, the reason I named it Diamond Hands has nothing to do with the financial term. And people are like, does it have anything to do with that? I'm like, no. It has to do with, for doctors, plastic surgeons that I work with, for MedSpa owners that I work with, the skill that's in your hands was formed under such pressure. And that's why I named the podcast Diamond Hands. And so, so we just focus really on the risk. And then we have the investment side as well. And so my business partner works on that to make sure that our clients are also building assets outside of the business. So that's pretty much, what we do.
Well, you said Diamond Hands. Those who know me know I love a good sparkle. So, maybe that's why I was drawn to you because I love diamonds on my hands. But anyway,
yes, honey.
I digress. But
I love it.
When I think about you, this is going to sound extraordinarily random, but Jennifer Lopez has her legs insured at Lloyd's of London. Surgeons have their hands insured because it's their way of life. And people in our industry, really on the MedSpa side, we forget about that. We forget about, our hands or the fact that disability insurance in your practice or even during COVID, this emergency disruption insurance, all these things that don't seem very sexy. They're not as sexy as Botox and filler, but are the lifeblood of your business. Like without it, you cannot survive. So I think you've been doing a lot of talking and teaching and training about this topic. Give us an idea of, when you go into these places and you're talking to MedSpa owners, what are the big things that you hear that in your line of work are just shocking to you? I have to know. Give us a down and dirty.
Well, it's not a matter of shocking. It's almost like I'm so surprised that, they haven't done some of these elementary things in their practice. But then I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, when you're building a business, you're not thinking about those things. You're not thinking about business succession planning. Like, to give you an example, I do work with people that are business partners many times, and they don't even have a buy-sell agreement in place. And as you know, a buy-sell agreement is something that, if you're incapacitated, say, you can no longer use your hands, and say you're a revenue producing injector, and you're bringing in, I don't know, based on your skills, 300, 400,000 a year or what have you. And you lose your ability to do that. your business partner is not going to want to continue to give you all the profits of the business if you can no longer bring to the table what you have brought to the table. And so just so I don't see things like, disability buy sell agreements and practices. I don't even see regular buy sell agreements and practices. And I'm like, have you worked with your lawyer on these things? And they're like, we don't even work with a, business succession planning lawyer. I'm like, whoo. And so those things are very surprising to me when I go into businesses, because more on the medical side, plastic surgeons, like having things, something like disability insurance, that's pretty much standard. They come out of school and there's someone there already saying like, you need to get this done, because they understand that if they can't do this, they need income, and then they can go teach. But they can still have an income. So those are some of the things that I really am surprised at. And they don't work with a financial planner. Not all of them, but many of them don't. Because, when they're new, they're thinking, I can't afford this, I can't do this. And then time just goes on and they don't address it until, much later on in the game.
Well, this is not exactly correlated, but in the same sort of vein, I was talking to a person who works on buy-sell agreements. We were talking about
Mm-hmm.
nurses, nurse-owned med spas, where in the
Yep.
U.S. it's illegal for an RN to own a med spa. You have to have a physician associated with it. In some states, and others, a nurse practitioner can do it. But when they
Yep.
go to the table to sell, they get half the amount, because they can't
Yep.
legally own the business. And although we
I
know there's
know.
all these different rules and loopholes, it's like you have to have an MSO, because if you don't, you're going to build
Yep.
this thing your whole life and go to sell it, and someone's going to say to you, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's only worth half because you legally don't own it." And then the nurse is like, "Oh my gosh, how come
Exactly.
no one told me this?" So I think
Yep.
there's all these traps. I hate to use that word, but there's a lot of traps that if you're not
Yep.
thinking about it and contingency planning for it, you're going to fall into them. And then what you've worked for so hard for so many years, it just kind of poof. You either lose a value or you get nothing out of it, or your partner says, "Forget you, we're not paying you anything because you can't produce any revenue." So, yeah, I
Yep.
think the planning for it, you're at a critical time for our industry. We're becoming a mature industry in some level. We're like a teenager,
Yes.
and we need it. We need it.
Yeah.
We need it desperately. So when you go help,
Yeah, 20 years in though. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, we're barely able to drink alcohol now, almost. But um, when you go into a medical spa and you're working with a person one on one, where do you start the process? Like, what is your step one with a person who has nothing in place yet?
Yeah, so the first step, I work much like a doctor as well. So I do the consultation process first, because I'm not going to just go in there and say, you need this and you need that. And we haven't even, taken a look at what's going on underneath. So the first step, I meet with the client, or a prospective client rather, and I'm just like, okay, I'm like, tell me what you hope to accomplish by us working together. And it's so funny. People sometimes don't really realize what I do. So they're like, oh my goodness, like, can you do like a buy sell agreement for me? I'm like, no, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm like, it's nice to know where your head is going. So I just kind of ask them, I'm like, what do you want to accomplish out of us working together? And then so I kind of get that. And then I ask about their vision, for their practice. And I ask them about their challenges. And I really like to dig deep into like even the personal side of their vision for their life, because it all goes together. And so then I kind of tell them, more about what I do and how the part of the wealth team that I am can help them. And, and I tell them about my process, and I'm like, okay, so you want to go forward? Yes or no? And they're like, okay, so yes. So then the next step is I do a formal intake. And so then I really, I get the P&L, I look at their balance sheets, and, I ask a lot of questions to find out what they already have in place and what their priorities are, because I'm not going to work on something just because it's my priority. No, it's like sometimes I help, clients with things that have nothing to do with me. Like, I'll introduce them to a business coach because that's what they need, like, so I try to help fill those gaps, but I'm going to ask them a lot of questions, do a formal intake, and actually get numbers, because we can't do anything without numbers. And so then after I've done the consultation, then I go back to my team, and then we can come back and say, all right, here are a couple of prescriptions that can help you solve your problem. Now I'm going to mark it in my doctor records. So even if you don't take my advice, it's not on me. And we're going to start where we need to start. And then we start that, actual relationship. And everything's really up front. I let them know, what things are going to cost and so on and so forth. And then, we move forward. So that's pretty much how I work with my clients. So it depends on what level they're at, There are going to be more senior business owners that have done some of the planning things already. There's going to be some who have done nothing. So we start where they are.
Well, as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking about all the people that I know who are thinking right now in their mind, oh, she manages our stock portfolio. When I hear wealth management, I think about our stocks. She's going to manage all of our stock market activity. That's not what you do entirely. So can you tell people
No.
sort of top 5 services that you offer and what that means for a med spa or for any business, frankly?
Yeah, so like on the risk management side, like I was saying, so that's the part where I specialize in. So I'm going to look at things like, disability insurance. Lloyd's of London, that is one of the carriers that I use, Dr. Tiffany. So yeah, so we'll look at things like risk management. So we'll do the disability insurance. Say you need a buy-sell agreement and you need that funded in some way. So say if your partner passes away, or, so we'll do something like, okay, we're going to make sure that your business partner is bought out, their family's bought out, so that you can own the practice solely in that situation. So we look at that. We also look at things like, we have the division where we can look at their malpractice insurance. We look at things like their, we look at things like their cybersecurity insurance. Because that's another thing, there's a med spa owner in Georgia. She didn't have a big following on her Instagram, but someone actually hacked her Instagram account, and they were like, okay, we want $10,000 for you to get it back. And say she did have a large following and that happened.
Not good. Trust me, as a person who has to have millions of dollars in cybersecurity insurance, get that.
Yeah.
You need it.
Exactly. So we'll look at things like that. So that's what we do on that base level on the business side. And then after that, once we've gotten that base level part of everything done, then they get passed over to my business partner. And then they look at things like, the wealth accumulation, which is then going to get into the stock portfolio and building the assets outside of the business. Because as you had talked about before, you can go to sell your practice and then you realize that the practice is not worth as much because you're not in it, because you built the practice around yourself.
That's a whole different podcast right there.
I know.
I can go all day about why is your name on the door? That means if you die, this thing dies. If you leave this, this thing is done. It makes me crazy, but
Yeah.
carry on. I won't interject on that. Keep going.
No, yeah, that's a whole other thing, guys. I always recommend to my clients. It's a great book if you guys like to read out there. It's called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And I don't know if any of you have read that, but that one is such a great read because it talks about the different roles that you could actually play in your business. And as a business owner, when you're thinking about these risk strategies and these investment strategies, you need to be thinking about what position that you want to play in your business. Because if you're going to be just the practitioner, guess what? You need to get someone to be the manager. You need to get someone, to help you in other ways. Because when you continue to build the practice around yourself, your practice may not be worth as much. And so everything that you're thinking about doing as far as the M&A side, which is not my expertise, but on the M&A side, it may not come to fruition.
And if you decide to be the person who is a practitioner, you can't also be the person who has your hands in everything as the owner. You have to relinquish some control and know your role. Hashtag know your role. If you're going to choose a different path, you've got to stick with it. Because I see so often people are like, you know what? I don't want to do all that. I just want to inject again. I want to be the pie maker again. But then they want to figure out, at the same time, I don't like how you're making the pies. I don't like how you're doing this. And I don't want to do this. Like, well, you can't be both. You cannot be both. Or you can't do either one really well. And so you got to either be the leader, the Indian or the chief. You can't really be both.
Exactly.
So, but
exactly. And I think that's huge when you're planning.
Well, Leslie laughed when she said malpractice because I was over here getting excited. Malpractice is such a giant expense. It's done so poorly in many ways. I had a guest on this past week, and she's talking about in her clinic she has to write down because they do concierge, home visits, everything she does, every off-label, everything. So her malpractice is like pages and pages and pages of procedures because she has to document everything. I feel confident that that's not being done in many places. And malpractice is such a non-negotiable, but there are different kinds of plans, different levels of protection.
Yeah,
that's a whole different ballgame as well.
Yeah, that's a whole other ball. Yeah,
but people will get that, right. They understand that risk. That risk feels real to me. If I have an adverse event, they're going to sue me. There's tort reform is not across all 50 states yet. It's litigious. I'm going to have malpractice, but I'm not going to have disability. I don't care if I get hurt, but I care if they get hurt. It's like, how does that make any sense? You should care if you get hurt too.
Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, especially when your practice starts to grow and you have other families depending on you. And when you have built that practice around your name, your nurses that may be working for you, they're still not the lifeblood of what you're doing. So, like, something that I do for my practices that do have people that are depending on them, even if you put something in place like a disability overhead insurance policy. So, what that is if you get disabled and you're no longer able to bring income into your practice and do those types of things, your business expenses are going to be paid for up to 12 months. And so that's going to be, your rent, or, your lease, or your payroll, or what you're paying on those machines, and so these things are so important, because if you have built a practice and you have employees who are depending on you, they will also leave your practice. Remember this, they will also leave your practice if they do not feel you have a plan in place if something happens to you. So if you all of a sudden get MS, or you get cancer, or something's happening to you and you can no longer be the chief, like Dr. Tiffany says, and your team doesn't have confidence that that business is going to support them, they're going to be out too.
And you miss one payroll and they're on the first train out of here.
Oh, yes.
Not,
Because,
yeah.
it's intense, because even in this industry, there is a big problem with turnover. Turnover is huge.
That's true.
And so unless you can, and unless you can really put together, plans that can really help keep some of these star employees in your business, the next offer that they get, they're going to leave. Because I always say this, I'm like, Botox is not an employee benefit. Like, I'm sorry. And it's like, what burns me is when I hear some practice owners say, oh, they're covered by their husband's insurance. I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, that's great, but do you offer it just in case you get someone who is not depending on a husband? Because I've been there. I've been married and done with that. Marriages end. Then what?
Hallelujah. Thank God they do.
Girl, that's a whole other podcast episode.
We don't have enough time for that today, guys. But it's interesting you say that. I just had a call with a very, pretty famous injector who was in a big practice. She just quit her job this week to go to another practice because of a lot of different things. But she says to me on the phone, I'm going to have health insurance for the first time. Girl. She's worked in a very large practice, an esteemed, reputable practice in a very big city. And she's telling me after, 7 years there that she's going to have health insurance for the first time in this new clinic. And my jaw almost hit the floor. You have a relatively famous injector who built her fame there, by the way. She didn't come in and, she built it there, built that practice as part of it. And they didn't even see fit to offer the poor thing health insurance. Like, I just can't imagine. I work in a company now, a small company. Many of our med spas that we serve as an aesthetic record company are way bigger than we are with headcount. They're 3 and 4 times our size. But we're offering things that they didn't even think about. We're offering 401k. We're offering PTO plans that are paid. We're offering employee benefits. And they're like, boy, that's nice. We're contractors here. If we don't kill, we don't eat. And so that's not a business plan. A 1099 contractor is not a business plan. I hate to tell you.
It is not a business plan.
Not going to work.
Because that also creates, I believe, an environment in your practice that, in the long run, in the short term, when you're kind of growing, getting things off the ground, okay, maybe you got to do what you got to do. Completely understand that. But once you've gotten past a certain point, it's like these people, they're operating underneath your name, and it's just like there was an injector that I talked to. She's no longer an injector. She actually works as an operations person for, I think, a CPA firm, an accounting firm. Yeah. And she turned 40 recently, and she was like, Leslie, she's like, I left the industry because I felt like the most unsuccessful person. She's like, I have nothing saved for retirement. And she's like, I'm 40. And she's like, I had no health benefits, kind of going back to the person that you were talking about before. She's like, I had no health benefits. And she was like, I was thinking about my long-term, trajectory, and there was nothing to look forward to. And so she's like, I loved what I was doing. I loved working with my patients. I had such a great time. She's like, I'm never going back to the hospital. And Now what? And so that's something that, as you know, there's this new wave of practice owners that are coming in that are, younger, because I was talking to someone yesterday. She's Sonia Ellis from the Lab MedSpa in Texas, and
Oh,
she
we
was on my
love her.
podcast.
She's going to be on
Yeah,
Aesthetic Next. She's incredible. She's like a thread genius. Yeah, she's awesome.
yes. Yeah, she's fabulous. And she was talking about this, like, you have the OGs in the industry, like they've been injecting for 30 years or whatever. Then you have the next level, and then you have like these a bunch of new ones coming in. But something you have to think about is that for long-term growth, it's cute to say, oh, we have great pictures, we're doing this, we're doing that, let's do TikToks. But it's not cute not helping your employees make sure that they're planning for the future. It's not cute.
I wish I could tattoo that somewhere because my whole thing about TikTok and dancing is a whole different issue. But I feel like there's, because I wouldn't do it. That's a disaster for all who are watching. But I see such obsession with my before and afters and my logo, and someone stole my picture, and people are obsessed and they're frantic about things on social media and about their SEO. But when I ask them about their plan long term, there is no plan. I came out of high
None.
school. I have friends that were hairdressers who bought their first house like 2 years into being a hairdresser, and I'm still in college, living on ramen noodles. Have SpaghettiOs, have no money. But then
Yes.
fast forward to now, and they're all coming to me saying, I've been cash rich for so long, but I have nothing. I have no savings. I have no college fund for my kids. I have just been making cash and spending cash, for
Yep.
20 years. So what do I do now?
Yep.
It's hard to make up 20 years of spending. For sure, start now. Don't wait. Don't get me wrong. But, I was looking at them when I was 25 saying, my gosh, they have a brand new car, brand new house. Look at how rich they are. Look at how successful they
Yeah.
are. And now they're in that moment, to your point, of saying, I've been a contractor. I've been renting a booth space somewhere. The salon's going to close. I have to go have a whole new clientele across town. Where am I going to start over? Like, how am I going to start over? And so I think there is benefit
Yeah.
to what you're saying, that all this is fleeting. Even in aesthetics, everything is fleeting all the time. And so I think you have to have a
Fleeting.
plan for everything. I always have I'm a doomsayer by trade. Like, I naturally think the world's going to end every day. And I'm always planning for it. Like, I would have a bug
Yeah.
out. I'm a girl with a bug out bag. Like, go to the bunker, the zombies are coming,
Yes.
But you got to be
You're like,
that
I've been
way.
working out just in case I need to run. Let's get
Yes, I'm like John Wick, but with long blonde hair. I'm ready to go.
I love you.
But I digress from this. I digress. But I think what you're saying about investing in your employees is really important. So what are things that you recommend besides employee benefits? Or, you said Botox is not a benefit. What are the kinds of things that people are offering that you find are really valuable to employees?
Well, like we had touched upon, health insurance, that's definitely one. Offering things, if your practice is big enough for it. And like I said, my partner talks more on the investment side of things, but offering that 401k. And if your practice is not big enough for it, maybe offer a SEP IRA. You know what I mean? So, because there's different types of vehicles. Oh no, there's different types of vehicles that you can use for your employees or what have you. So having those things so that they can start saving for the future, even if it's a small thing, over time, it does add up for something for them, even if they choose that they're not going to elect to do the entire thing. And then, especially for places that have some injectors that are really integral to the practice. Like if they left, they would take a whole huge clientele for them. As you probably know, with the 401k, you can't discriminate. You can't say, oh, I'm only going to do this for one person and not for the other. With those types of plans, they're called qualified plans. What you do for one is what you do for all. And that's fine. However, there are some other things that are called non-qualified plans. And so you can make executive compensation plans for some of your star injectors that actually kind of works as a pension in a sort of way. So it's like, okay, give me 10 years of service, honey. And then all this cash that we're putting on the side here for you will be yours. And you have access to it and you can do whatever you want with it after 10 years. So that's called an executive bonus plan, executive compensation. So there's certain things that you can do if you have a bigger practice to, ensure that some of your best people are going to stay with you. So but those other things I mentioned in the beginning, like, the 401k, the health insurance, I think that's standard.
I agree with you, but I think about the executive carve out. People will talk about, I don't want to give equity. I'm not going to give equity in my practice to an injector. I don't want to do equity. they're so opposed to equity, which is a whole different issue. But I think to your point, these kinds of plans circumvent the idea of having to give away your ownership. It's more of a
Yeah, you don't
reward.
have to.
You can still say, I'm going to give you a carrot at the end of this long term commitment to me, but I'm not going to give you equity in the practice. A, because you think you want it, but you really don't. You think you want to have equity, but then you have to be a voting member. If you have to put money in to keep the practice open, whole different can of worms. But I think there's a lot of
Yes.
benefit to that. The whole like pension part of it, I think, is a really good idea.
Exactly. So yeah, those are some things that practice owners can do. So, so it's like it's like a whole bag of things. And like I said, my area of expertise is the risk side of it. But then I have my team members. We have it. I call it kind of almost like a family office of a med spa. We can really handle it all from soup to nuts, and we're only one part of the wealth team. That's just something else that I talk to MedSpa owners about. Who is on your wealth team? Like, do you have those pieces, those trusted members that you can actually reach out to and say, hey, I need to get this trademark done because now my business is going up. Like, I want to protect my intellectual property. Do you have that person that you can call? CPAs are amazing. Do you have a great CPA who's making sure you're getting all those things done? Besides the CPA, they don't always offer bookkeeping services. Are you doing your bookkeeping yourself, or do you have a really good bookkeeper that's on your side running all those things? Do you have your insurance advisor, your financial advisor? Do you have that in place? And so, and of course, like a trusted banker, obviously. But it's like, who was part of your wealth team? Like, do you have it? And many times they don't. We actually help our clients put together that wealth team, because it's important for all parts of that team to be working together, not just saying, hey, the financial advisor is doing this and the lawyer is doing that. And they're not really talking to each other. It doesn't make much sense. And so we like to keep an open dialogue between all those members.
Well, I think the whole idea of who's on your team is important. I had a call this week with an attorney who's, tell me why we can't do this and can't do that. It's for a medical spa who's wanting to work with our company. And he's like, well, what do you guys even do anyway? Like, that might have been the first thing you should have understood is like what we offer an EMR service. What's an EMR do? I'm like, you're the wrong person for this wealth team. But as you say that, I think about private equity coming into our industry, and they're coming in with a vengeance, and they're successful.
Yeah.
They're franchising at a rapid rate. They're taking practices that were good before, making them great now. And I think what you're saying is why. They've invested in finding the right characters to be in their play, the right CPA, the right attorney. They're putting together these like all-star teams where they're taking good to great because they're investing in the places where there are gaps. If you're a great injector, invest in being a great injector for sure, but that's not where you keep putting your money. It's like saying, I'm going to keep doing the thing I'm already great at and keep learning more about it. Sure, do it. But what about the things that you're not good at? Let's invest money into fixing that problem. And I think that these private equity firms, they're going into it with their eyes wide open saying, we want to bring structure, stability, long-term planning to these medical spas or these chains. And so they're successful because they're bringing that in. So I think you're seeing right now in the industry, private equity is coming in. I mean, they're everywhere. They're buying people up.
Yes.
Dermatology happened obviously at a massive wave a few years ago. But
Yes.
they're here, people. They're here. They're going to come knock on your door and try to buy your practice. And when they come try to buy it, are you ready? Have you done the things Leslie's saying to be able to get your money out of it, to buy out your partner if they say, I don't want to do this and you want to do it? Have you put the plans in place to be able to actually sell your business?
Yeah, it's really intense because that I feel like that comes in, a lot of different. It's funny. So guys, you don't know this about me, but I used to be a pharmacy tech for an animal hospital back in the day.
Oh, sweet girl. I'm sure it was a great job with a lot of benefits.
Back in the day, we're going back. Like almost a decade ago. But any case, it's just like even there, in the veterinary side, you saw it happen too. Like they're coming knocking on the door talking about, oh, you guys have a good practice that you're running here. And I saw the owners go through it. They didn't do it. But it's definitely something that's, like Dr. Tiffany said, it's coming. And when in your business, processes and systems for everything. And when we don't have processes, when we don't have systems, we don't have anything we could sell.
If you do it more than a few times, in a given time period, and many people do the same thing, it's time for an SOP. If we're all doing the same thing multiple times, it's time for a structured standard process. Otherwise, the wheels fall off. And I think it's the same with, with wealth management, with risk, with benefit, all of it's the same. If you don't have a structure in place for even onboarding new hires, what are we going to offer? We all get the same plan.
Yes.
I mean, onboarding, I'll tell you, as a person who hires people a lot, onboarding is a beatdown. It is so incredibly
Yeah.
hard to onboard from the insurance part of it, 401k. Do you have your Google login, your Slack login, your AR login? Do you have a computer provision? Do you have, I mean, there's
Yes.
just a lot. And I think about the cybersecurity insurance you mentioned.
Yeah.
I work in a tech firm, and so we're all working within technology every day, HIPAA, all these things, and people are now
Mm-hmm.
ransoming. They're taking over firms, and the $10,000 ransom you mentioned. Sometimes it's $1 million ransom. So we
They
work
want it in
against that,
Bitcoin.
and they want it in Bitcoin, so they can't trace it, and can't find them. But that's a real thing, and so I work on this security series, like two-factor authentication. Make sure you have unique passwords. Get a password keeper. People are like, I use password 123. Like, when they come ransom your stuff, you're gonna wish you'd put a little bit different password together because it is real. These like pirates are out
Yes.
there and they're coming. It's all over the
It's real.
news. You see it every single day. So clean up your house, people.
Exactly.
Keep your house clean. Keep your front doorstep
I
clean.
know. Exactly. So risk management, definitely. So yeah, so that's it's basically, that's the base of any plan, to you MedSpa owners that are listening. Your risk management is just really, that's the base of what you should be doing for your practice. Yeah, should you have a business coach? Of course you should. You need to get those things so you can have, the processes and systems in place and everything, like Dr. Tiffany was saying. But you have to make sure your financial house is in order, not just making sure that you have revenue coming through the door and you're like, oh my goodness, my top line revenue was 3.4 million this year. That's beautiful. But if something happened, is that going to be the same thing? No, probably not.
And by the
So
way,
make sure you have. Go
and where
ahead.
your expenses 3.3 million. That's what I usually find. Like, my top line 3.4, yeah, but I had to pay 3.3 in expenses. So I really didn't make any money. I'm like, that's a bit of a problem too, my dear.
Just a little bit of a problem. Just a little bit of a problem. It's like, so yeah. So it's just really interesting what we see in the industry, and it all started. I'm gonna give a shout out. I actually started in this industry because it was funny. I used to do the same thing that I'm doing now, but for breweries. So a girl was drinking in these streets. So
Oh my goodness.
So, I used to do the same thing for breweries or what have you. But when I had moved to the Boston area, it was like a little over 2 years ago. I actually met a wonderful woman, and you guys know her probably, Audrey Rose. Yeah. So I had met Audrey. And it's funny, I had reached out to her for the most random thing because I didn't even know, what this industry was or whatever. And I was just like, I was like, your hair is beautiful. I'm like, where do you go? What do you do? Whatever. That's why I reached out to her because I saw she lived close to me. And she was like, oh girl, this is where da 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 da. And she was telling me. And we're both Jamaican or whatever. And then she was just like, and she was like, I have this event. Why don't you come? It was her first Audrey Rose Institute Network event that she had. And I was like, what is this, Audrey? I'm like, it was so amazing. But that's how I actually got into it. And she's a great client of mine. I love her. But that's how I got into this. And that's when I was like, these are women. These are not men that are sexually harassing me after I have a beer at their establishment. I'm like, they're smart. And they just have a couple of gaps that I'm already doing this. I've been in the industry for, 5 years. I'm like, this is already something that I'm doing, but let me just transfer it over here to women and empowering women. I got so excited and so passionate about it. So it's because of her why I actually solely work in this industry now.
Well, I think you mentioned something there that I look at this industry, and these people are so incredibly talented. I mean, these women they've built these incredible businesses. They're so talented. They're beautiful injectors. They have incredible results, and they just have a few gaps. And my fear is always if those gaps are going to ruin all that work. That's what I think keeps me up at night is, even in our business, what can we do to help people who have built these enterprises, built these, colossal businesses to be a going concern, even when things go rocky. And I think during COVID, we saw businesses who survived, who succeeded, who thrived. And it was never a more proud moment really for us to say, do we have a part of that? Were we able to help you in any way to
Yeah.
keep what you've built alive in this moment? And so I think to your point with
Mm-hmm.
Audrey, she's helping them learn incredible skills, become great injectors, because she's a great injector, obviously. She's a brilliant
Mm-hmm.
injector, but she's also running a really good business. So I think she brings a lot of business skills in her trainings that maybe others don't who do training schools. And you're actually going out training with her people and talking to them
Yes.
and giving them advice, which I think is a big missing piece. So tell, kind of walk me through how that works. Are you coming in as an advisor? Is it a certain class for her members, or how do you integrate
Mm-hmm.
with her institute?
Yeah, so I'm just an educator, and so basically, it's a webinar based series, of course, COVID and everything, and so I just go in and I just do some presentations for them, and then they can ask questions and things like that, and of course, everyone's situation is the same, like just like I'm not gonna go get you know. I'm not going to go to an establishment and say, hey, give me 15 units or something. Like, that's not how it works. So they'll ask me individual questions and then they'll be like, hey, I want to talk and get some one-on-one help. And then that's how it happens. So she really offers me as a resource to her school. And so I'm able to educate them and actually able to help them on a one-on-one basis to build a plan that's specific to them. Because what Sally at this MedSpa does is not necessarily what Rachel at this MedSpa is going to do, because you also have your personal things that you're dealing with too that also affect financial planning. Yeah.
But you mentioned the Well team earlier, who's on your team, and I want to make sure that we really focus in and note the fact that Leslie focuses on this industry. Like your expertise now, obviously you've done lots of things, but in this exact moment, you're focusing on aesthetics. Like you understand the med spa, the landscape, the challenges. And to your point
Mm-hmm.
earlier, finding an attorney who understands the same, a CPA who understands the same, a banker
Mm-hmm.
who understands the same. And I think you can't undervalue how important it is for your team, whoever's backing you across legal, financial, everything, to understand what you do all day, to understand your challenges. Because I've
Yeah.
talked about this a lot. I have CPAs I deal with all the time at the Aesthetic Record, and promotions,
Mm-hmm.
buying things ahead of time and then coming in and getting them done. Cash versus accrual
Mm-hmm.
accounting. It makes their
Yep.
minds just totally spin because of pre-sale promo. Like, how do you do a pre-sale? Because they're used to retail, buy and bill. Like we do buy and
Yes.
bill here, but it's a little bit different. And so I spend a
A
lot of my
little
time
different.
teaching CPAs how the industry works. When I'm not the one who's getting paid, they're billing their client
Wow.
hourly to have me tell them how the industry works. And it's like, wait a minute,
Wow.
something here does not make sense. I'm the one
You're like,
not getting paid and wasting time, and they're getting all the benefits. But I
you're
feel
like, you're like, excuse me.
I'm like, my going rate per hour is. But I think but I want to help them, because otherwise this poor CPA is going to hurt their business, unintentionally,
Yes.
because they don't know better. And so I think it's, I feel like it's a duty,
Yes.
maybe it's altruism, it's a duty that I feel like I have to help them understand what's going on here. But, I feel like that's
100%.
where if I said, go see Leslie, she has you handled, I know you've got it handled because you understand their life and their challenges. And,
Mm-hmm.
you can't undervalue that,
Yeah.
people. You cannot undervalue that.
Yeah, I've interviewed for my book, and some of you listening may have been part of the people that I interviewed. I have interviewed over 100 med spa owners, during the research phase of writing for, Diamond Hands, Release the Businesswoman Within. So, it's just interesting, all the stories that you hear and why people went into this. And most of you guys, it's similar things. You just wanted to get out of, see a lot of ICU, a lot, you wanted to get out of death and dying and all of that stress. And you wanted to do something to make people feel beautiful. And it's like, and that's a wonderful thing. It's just, we just have to apply our business skills to that as well. And if we're not sharp there, it's okay. It's totally okay. And it's okay to be naked with someone you trust and have them clothe you with their knowledge and put a nice fuzzy robe around you and say, listen, no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. Your family that you went into this to support, if you have one, is going to be okay. Your business is going to be okay. So think of risk management as that like fuzzy, nice bathrobe that you're putting around you when it's really cold, and no matter, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Well, if you can learn to inject, you can learn to do business.
You
This
can.
industry is learning, because no one can go to school for injecting, right? There is no program anywhere that's about injecting. It's not a thing, not a
Mm-hmm.
certification. So we know that anyone who's doing it today had to learn it post graduation as an additional
Yes.
add-on skill. So they obviously have a high
Yes.
learning agility, which means they can learn and change course, quickly. So you can learn business too. I've interviewed obviously people for the podcast and just in general practice, and I see these
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs who have no formal training of any sort, no business
Mm-hmm.
class ever in their life, and they are crushing it because
Crushing it.
they're finding podcasts like yours, or finding places to read books, classes to take online, webinars, things to on YouTube to watch, and they're collecting all these experiences into this really great skill set. So you can learn
Mm-hmm.
it. But I think having a team that can handle the things that you can't learn because they require a formal education, i.e., risk management, insurance is a whole different world. Get people on your
Yeah.
team who know those things, but be smart enough to know that you need it. That's the part I think we've got to understand.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
But you mentioned your books. Let's transition into your book. I want to make sure we talk about that. I want to write a
Yeah.
book, but I don't have the energy for it. Walk us through the book. Like what
I
made you
barely have the energy.
what made you want to write it? What's the takeaway? Give us the book so we'll go out and buy it in 2022. We want to buy this book. Tell
Yes,
us all about it.
2022. So basically, the title of the book, for any of you guys who do follow me, it's Diamond Hands: Release the Businesswoman Within. So I was just like, the only way I'm really going to understand this industry is if I dive really, really deep, because I like to be a specialist. That's why, I deal with risk management. Someone else on my team deals with investments. Someone else on my team deals with employee benefits. You know what I mean? So I like to be this, I like to specialize. I like to go deep instead of like going really wide, because I don't think it benefits anybody. So in any case, I was like, this is a really great way for me to go deep. So my undergrad is in English literature. So I love to write. I love to write, and I love to read. Anyone who follows me knows that too. Like, I'm always putting up, this is like, third quarter, second quarter reading list for business and finance. I'm putting out the books that I read so you guys can get some of the knowledge. But this book is really talking about, the relationships that you have to build when you're starting out your MedSpa business, some of the mental things that you go through when you're starting your business, and also just really highlight some stories from some amazing MedSpa owners from around the country and what they went through. It's like, so I've really been drawing on a lot of these MedSpa owners' experiences, and then, looking at, some of the building blocks that you need to have that are timeless, because there's certain things in the industry that are always going to change. I'm not touching. That's not my area of expertise. But like things that they should be looking for, like, we're going to be talking about who's on your wealth team, those pieces that you should be building out, how you should interview them, talking about basically, so just those types of things. So it's really like a mindset book, the relationships that you need to build, stories, and, talking about some of the financial building blocks that you should be looking for in your business. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work. So reading through transcriptions, hundreds of pages after this has been done, after the research page was over, it's been a lot. But the writing it's tedious. I'm not even going to be like, it's amazing. It's tedious.
Well, let me give you one thing for your wealth team. AI. There's a lot of AI tools that will help you take all that, transcribe it, and pull out common themes and categorize it for you. So we could save you hundreds of
Really?
hours, Leslie, hundreds of hours of reading transcriptions.
Really?
Yes.
You need to let me know what that is, because I used Otter to transcribe
Love
it.
Otter. If you
Yeah.
guys aren't using Otter, here's a plug. You can dictate. It does all the writing for you, and it's actually pretty accurate. And you can share both the text with friends, or colleagues, whomever, and also the audio in case you are like me and you talk Southern and fast. I have to share the audio because no one can read the text. So get
Yeah.
Otter, OTTER, get it. Sorry for
Yeah.
that. They need to sponsor our episode.
I
Otter.
know, guys, they're not paying us for this. That was extemporaneous. Like, seriously. but it was so helpful. So I loved it, because when I was actually talking to someone, I could really focus on them instead of like, oh, hold on, and like writing out notes or whatever. So that was great. And then my assistant, I love her. She went through and just made sure that the transcriptions were correct.
Well, good thing you didn't interview me because it wouldn't be correct. I can promise you. Siri's like, who are you? And what are you saying? I can't even use
Oh,
Siri.
stop it.
She's like, who is
Stop
this
it.
person? But you also have you had the podcast too. So I'm sure it's a lot of the same people who are spilling over. But your podcast is like an all-star flipping lineup of people. You have the mavens of the mavens on there. You have a few men too, I see. So she doesn't just
Yes,
do
I
women; she
do.
does men. But your podcast is growing like wildfire. And again, you've got lots of really famous people on there from our industry. So what's it like being a
Yeah.
podcast host? Because I've got my thoughts. You start with yours.
I mean, a podcast, so I'm telling you, so my podcast, a large majority of it was done during the lockdown. And I'm an extrovert. Like, I'm the woman, like, I'll be at the conference and I'm going to be talking to everybody. Yeah, you guys, if you haven't gotten your tickets to Aesthetics Next, just kidding. But it's
That
just
was sponsored. No, I'm kidding.
I know, right? But it's like I'm the type of person that when I'm at a conference or anywhere, like I'm moving and shaking. Like I read the room, I'm looking, and that's how I am. And I love energy of people. And so my podcast was something that really kept me, if you want to say spiritually alive, during COVID. And so it was just like, and so during that time, there was access to a lot of people because they were like, our businesses are like on lockdown right now or whatever. So like, I got to interview some amazing people like, Ario now is a friend of mine, the CEO of Reveness. Like, and that was just because I sent a DM to their page, like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? And so when someone reached back out and they were like, yes, I was like, wait a whole minute, So I love being a podcast host because what I love too is when I'm doing a little research on the person before I do the podcast and I kind of like ask questions. So second season, like I'm talking some peak performance coaches are going to be on, some, just really great people that I think are going to be that are really good to help people in this industry to think about some of the business side of things that you may not be thinking about, you know? But I personally love podcasting.
You know what I like about it, at least for the record, is I like to find people who are kind of off the beaten path. You know, you have a lot of like really
Mm,
high end famous people on your podcast. I've been looking for people who are under the radar, who are doing
yeah.
these. Like we had a person on this past week, Sarah Allen, who has built this 85 providers, 12 states, 14 physicians, like
Wow.
just crazy giant business, and she's under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
You would never know who she is because she's not on the big podiums, but she is building a flippin' like empire. And I think there's all these really
Wow.
cool stories that we can highlight. You got to talk to her with your book, but that people
Mm-hmm.
don't see. And I think there's in our industry, as you know, social media is king. And so unless you have 55,000 followers, no one cares about you. But I think there's so much
Mm,
magic happening all around us that no one's capturing. You know, surgeons who are
yes.
starting out, nurses who are building these empires, doctors who are saying I want to do medicine totally different, do concierge. I've just
Yes.
found such interesting pieces and nuggets from people. And the other thing that you mentioned is doing research. I've found that the research is always very similar. The same kind of
Mm-hmm.
article, same kind of story. Like I don't want to hear all that. I don't want to hear what you've told people on all the articles that you've written. I want to hear like the real deal. Like what do you really like? What are you really
Yes.
doing all day? And you don't get enough time on a podium to peel that back. You don't get enough time in an interview with a
Yeah.
newspaper, or a magazine writer to peel that back. And so I feel like you and I have this incredible opportunity to kind of lift the veil and give the
Yes.
real deal about people, the raw part of it that you can't get
The
anywhere
raw
else.
part.
So I
Exactly.
feel like
And I agree with that.
and I want to be Oprah, so there you go. It all works out here.
Okay, you could be okay, so in the med spa world, you could be the white Oprah. I could be the black Oprah in the med spa world. And we could just come together and do like this whole like, Oreo thing. You know what I'm saying?
Let's do it.
Like, I mean,
But kudos to our industry for being so eager to come on. You think about other
yeah.
industries. I look at dentistry. Dentistry is aesthetics in 10 years. So if you want to ever
Mm,
think about what's coming for our world, look at dentistry, where it's going. DSOs have been there way before MSOs were here with us.
oh yeah.
But they
Hmm.
don't have a lot of these things that we have because they're not as extroverted as our people are. They're not as eager to talk about their stories. People have been coming
Yes.
on to our podcast excited to tell their story, eager to share their information, to share their knowledge. They're not
Yes.
scared. It's not a scarcity mentality. They're not trying to protect their trade secrets. They're out and proud
Yes.
about what they're doing. And I think that's remarkable that people, despite a highly competitive, very competitive industry, they're still eager and willing to share their lessons, their best practices, their
Hmm.
nuggets. Like I don't know, I think
Hmm.
it's a really telling thing about our industry and how great the community is. So
Well, yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you're living in an abundance mindset instead of a scarcity mindset, even if that patient who comes in for a consultation doesn't actually want to work with you after they go through the process, it's okay. Guess what? There's however many other thousand faces in your community that you could work with, because I really believe that anybody who becomes a patient of yours, or in my case, a client of mine, it's like it's an energy thing. I'm just like, the universe brought you to me for a reason, and we're going to either work together or we're not. And if we're not, it's okay. Like, I still appreciate who you are as a business person. Like, and it's okay. And I think the people who are coming on and sharing their dark sides too on podcasts or whatever, it's just like they realize that, like, who is for me is for me. Who is not for me, it's okay. You might be for me someday, but today it's okay. Have a good one. And here's a parting gift too.
Well, as you say that, I think about even for our business. I interview people all the time as the customer, marketing
Yeah.
firms, whoever, to see if I want to come on board with their company. And there are many days
Mm-hmm.
where they're not the right fit for us. They're just not. But then
Yep.
I think I have a few people who would be a great fit. I think I'll call so and
Yes.
so who'd be a great fit for your business. So I think the consultation that doesn't work out for you may be the gateway to a whole other audience that you would have never touched because they wouldn't have access to you. Because I try to do
Mm-hmm.
that. If I think that you did a great job, like I love the consultation, the diagnostic was fantastic, but you're just not the right fit for my business, I feel almost guilty about saying no. I have such guilt issues. For those of you listening, I've mentioned it. I have major, major guilt all the time. But I'm like, it's my duty to find someone who will be your customer. I'm going to find them right now for you.
Yes.
I'm going to start dialing for dollars for you. I become like their best
I
sales
love
rep. But I think that happens a lot, even for patients. Like, gosh, I was too scared to get Botox, but my
it.
girlfriend's
Mm-hmm.
been dying to get it, and I think you would love her. You would love this injector. You got to
Yes.
call her. I think that
Yes.
happens more than
Yes.
we think it does because they don't say it's a referral, but I think when you do good work, no matter if people take
Mm-hmm.
advantage of it or not, good work begets good work. It'll keep going for you. It'll keep
Exactly.
multiplying for you. It's an abundance mindset, as you mentioned. Scarcity never helped
Mm-hmm.
anybody. No one ever survived and thrived with scarcity. Survival maybe, but not thriving. Just doesn't happen.
Exactly. Yeah, because survival is the lowest rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sorry, guys, I'm dorking out. Sorry, sorry,
PhD
sorry.
in org dev. We could talk about Maslow's all day long.
Oh my god, I want to dark out. I'm like, because I read too much. But yeah, so it's really amazing. So yeah.
I'd be interested though, before we end this thing, to dork out for a second. Those of you who are listening in med spas will feel this in your bones. It's interesting to see now in a group of Gen Z millennials, if we did Maslow's hierarchy again, where the needs
Mm-hmm.
would rank. I think people, in many cases, would rank
Mm.
the psychological safety right now after COVID a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
important than other things. But I think that the esteem, the ego part of it, the being
Yeah.
famous, people would trade their children's food to be a famous Instagram influencer. Like, I mean, people would do crazy things now. The safety needs or the survival needs, I don't know. I think the dynamic has shifted with the generations now that they will go without food to get a Louis Vuitton, honey. They will.
Honey, let me tell you something about that. So this is what my opinion is on that. Because we live in a society where we don't realize in America how cushy everything is. We do have our basic necessities taken care of, whether it's by ourselves or by the government. But I'm not going to get too deep there. We're just going to, just skirt around that topic a little bit. But we have our basic needs taken care of in this country. Only if you're a person who probably has like mental illness and you have no family and no support system will you be looking like California or Seattle. That's another thing altogether, when it's mental illness, but that's another thing altogether. But so you're so right. You'll see people on Instagram with the filters and the Louis Vuitton bag and, oh, this, da, 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 and it's like, but there's no substance behind it. It's like, is your marriage good? Are your kids okay? Like, are you spiritually healthy or are you just on Instagram all day? And that rhymed. Wow. That rhymed.
You got skills, honey. You got skills.
You know,
Well, have you seen the
DJ Leslie.
the Mariah Carey meme? I think about it all the time. Mariah Carey rolls up in a Bentley and a full jewelry in her purse. It's like going to get my Botox and her rent check just bounced. It's like that meme about her. I feel like that's so real. It's so
It's
real.
real.
But
It's real.
we have a mutual friend, Josh Davis. You guys know him as Talks Josh. Who
Oh, that's my baby.
he just had this most incredible Instagram live a few weeks ago, and he really, kind of as he always does, he bared his soul about. You get so disillusioned with Instagram and the followers and the equal amounts of hate and love, and that you could become. It's almost like a psychosis if you're not careful. It takes over your life, and it was impacting his ability to run his business, to be happy, to be healthy. His health had some issues. I mean, he's like the Instagram guy. Like you think about Instagram fame, you're like, oh, it's Talks
Hmm.
Josh. And even he's coming
I
out saying, guys,
know.
you've got to have a life outside of this. You've got to have
You
an
do.
empire to build. Whatever it is you're doing, your kids, your family, focus outside of whatever people put on your comments and your likes. There's more to life than that. So
Hmm.
thank
There
you, Josh, for
is.
being very honest. And that Instagram live, if you guys haven't seen it, oh my God, it was so good about
Yeah, it's still
Whisperwood.
there.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
I was like in my kitchen making dinner, like crying, in the middle, like what? I'm like,
Makeup streaming.
I'm like the Grinch. I'm leaking. I'm
Josh.
leaking. Like, what's wrong
I
with
actually just
me?
talked to him yesterday. I love him. He's so amazing. Yeah. But it's true. And that's something, I found too when I was interviewing MedSpa owners, and they were like, oh my God, social media is so hard. Social media. And it's like, okay. And I understand because, social media is the way that a lot of us, including myself, especially during COVID, brought in new clientele into our businesses, but there's a point.
Yes, there is a point. I'm just now really getting into it full throttle, and boy, it's tough. People are hateful and awful to you, and some love you and some
Mhm.
don't like you. And if you can't deal with that, it's going to be a hard road for you on Instagram because the love and the hate are equal parts. But as we wrap up here, I want to let the audience know that Leslie's going to be at Aesthetic next. She's going to be talking about her entire portfolio of things, how to help your med spa, help you grow, help you think about your wealth management, your plan. I love this idea that, and I look at your Instagram handle, I think about, you plan for things, you plan for your life, you plan for all the things
Yes.
that are going to happen to you that are going to be great, and all of a sudden, as they say, shit happens. Make the plan,
Exactly.
try the plan, forget the plan, get a new plan. It's like you
Exactly.
never know what's going to happen, so you have to
Hmm.
again plan for things that are not on your forefront of your mind. But you're coming to in September to
Exactly.
Aesthetic Next, so guys, get tickets to come watch her. Book coming out next year. Podcast season 2 coming out in September, I think on the 3rd,
Yes.
perhaps. Which again, you mentioned peak
Yes.
performance, all kinds of things for the business. What else are you going to be doing in the next few months that we should be thinking about that we can go follow to learn more about you and all of your various things, your activities?
Well, like I said, the podcast, like Dr. Tiffany said, that's September 3rd. So you can find me in a couple of ways. You can find my podcast by going on Apple or Spotify. So, and it's called Diamond Hands Podcast. And also, right now, you can find my website at www.planlifehappens.com. And let's see what else. My Instagram handle is at Plan Life Happens. Over the next few months, I mean, it's like as far as like big things that, of course, I'm working on partnering with more aesthetic schools. So if you are an aesthetic school owner and you do want someone to help your newbies or even some of your more established practitioners look at these things in risk management and wealth management, my team is more than happy to help put together some classes that would be best for your students. And as usual, I am open for consultation. So if you do want a consultation, you can find us on Instagram, and all our contact information is there. And I think that's really it for now. And yeah, a lot of education on my Instagram, so you can go there.
Her Instagram is great. Her reading list is fantastic. So her
Thank
quarterly
you.
reading list. But yes, you mentioned something I want to bring out before we go is if you're in injection school, I hear a lot about what's the next level. Like how do I do advanced classes? I'm doing tons of beginner Botox, beginner filler. What's the next level? This is the next level, not only in skill set for injecting, but also in building the business and becoming a better entrepreneur. So call Leslie, get her at your school, either on a webinar virtually, fly her out to wherever you're doing classes. I know that Audrey could speak to this, that you've had a tremendous impact on her membership, with all the things that you've taught them. So guys, call her, get on her Instagram, DM her, get her there. But for the record, Leslie, you have been a fantastic guest. I've had a ton of fun. I've laughed. I've actually cried. If you guys are watching this, I have had to get the tears off my face because I've been crying, laughing so much. But at the same
Oh
time,
no.
you are equal parts joy and fun and also just badass, business boss babe. So I think that's why people love you, that they're gravitated to come to you. And, you've got a magnetic energy that, I don't know. I love it. I want you here every day. Come work with
Thank
me so I can laugh
you.
this much every day.
Yeah, I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. On the disc spectrum, I'm an ID. So I'm dominant and I'm also like very people focused. And some plastic surgeons can't take me. They're just like, you're a little out there. I'm like, all right, I have a team member for that if you don't want me. So guys, for those of you who like a more sober and serious person, I do have team members on my team for that, and I could be out of the picture, but I will always be the face of my business. Thank you.
When I met you, I said, I'm all D. You're like, I don't trust you. I don't trust all Ds. So, we still have a trust thing to work out, but we're getting there one day at a time.
Yes, one day at a time. Awesome.
Well, I can't wait to see you in September, and I will look forward
Same.
to all your incredible things you're doing and podcasting and books and just changing our industry. What I hope for is the better and our businesses for the better. So thank you again for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Tiffany. It's been so fun.
Well, I will see you guys all next week. Bye, Leslie.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.